right, let's get this password box validated. Go ahead in your global variable section and let's add another one of our check variables, and this one's for check number. In this tutorial, we're going to check the password to make sure that there's a number that exists in the password. So var check number equals false. And then come on down right below our check first char, and we're going to set up a new function called check for number. In this function, we're also going to learn a new method called the char code at method. So don't type this part, it's only for demonstration purposes. But I'm using the console log again, and the console log is a great way to debug. I think a lot of you in the last chapter where you had to walk through, not the last chapter, but the book project where you had to walk through on your own, I think a lot of you learned a lot about debugging during that process. And debugging is one of the most important skills you can have as a programmer. So using console log is a good way for debugging, and when I created this project, I used a lot of console log. Okay, so if we console log phrase, it has just Stranger Things in our console. So let's apply the char code at method to this, and we need to pass a value of basically what character we want to return. So let's start with 0, which, you know, we would think logically would be this S right here. So let's click refresh, and it returns an 83. S is not 83. Or is it? If we look at our ASCII chart, S is 83 in ASCII. Okay, so char code at returns the ASCII value of whatever character you send to it. Okay, so we're going to use that to help us determine if there's numbers in a password. So our char code at values are 48 through 57. So we'll just use a simple loop to go through each of those characters and make sure that a number exists in those. So let's do for I equals 0, we'll say I is less than. What happens when we get the value and determine its length from the password box? And each time this loop iterates, we want to add 1. Okay, so now this is just an if statement. We'll have an if, and our condition is if pass1 input dot value dot char code at is I. So it'll start at 0, which really we could change this to 1 because our first digit's not supposed to be a number anyway, but whatever. It's the way I did it, so it's the way we're going with it. It's less or greater than or equal to 48, and pass1 input dot value dot char code at index location I. Hold on, checking my parentheses is less than or equal to 57. And if that is the case, then we're going to set check number to true. And then we're going to do something we haven't really done before. We're going to tell it to break from the loop. Remember, break is just telling it to move to the next curly bracket. So basically, it's just going to get out of this loop. All right, so that's what happens if it's true. But we still need a way to throw an error message to our little place right here, little span right here. So we'll have to create like a separate if statement for that. So we're going to say outside of our for loop, if check number does not equal true, then we want to call our function error message. So we're calling that function, and we're sending it an error message that says your password should contain a number. Okay, so let's go and make sure that we have check number in our reset variables, setting it to false. And then we also need to remember our validate first password is checking all 3 conditions. Okay, so we need to add that one in to this condition. So our check number exactly equal true. Okay, and then we also need to call our check for number function in our big function that calls all the other functions. So I'm gonna call it right below check first char. Okay, so this should be working now. Let's try it out. If I do this, password should contain a number. Let me add a 1. Yay, we get a check mark. Okay. All right, for the next portion of the project, I'm turning you on your own. I want you to create a way for us to check and make sure this re-enter password validates. So basically, come up with a function that will check and make sure these 2 inputs match. What the user typed in the password box is going to be the same as what the user typed in this box, the re-enter password box. If they did not, if they don't match, throw an error down here, show an error that says these passwords do not match. And then if they did enter a valid password twice, put the check mark there, okay? Don't forget that you'll need to have some global variables like we did here to access your input box and your span for your message where you have your little messages, okay? It doesn't have to be too complicated. I'm impressed if you do complicated, if you make it more than my expectations. But all you need to do in this project is check and make sure that this input here matches this input here, okay? Create a new function and make sure you call that function in your validate form. All right, if you have questions, email me, and I look forward to see all these cool projects that y'all come up with, okay? All right, bye-bye.